All right, so Pennsylvania, this election cycle, huh? You guys really want to get into it, understand what's driving voters in this crucial swing state. And, you sent us a ton of interesting stuff, articles, dispatches, really like front row seats to what's happening on the ground. We're talking like inside those rural diners, college campuses, even a working class bar where who knows, maybe that plumber's vote is up for grabs.
And that's what makes Pennsylvania so fascinating. Right now, it really is like peering into, I don't know, the political soul of America. You can see how all those national anxieties, but also those hopes, are playing out in these very specific local communities. And those insights, they might just tell us who ends up in the White House.
Absolutely. It's like we're ditching the voting booth for maybe a beat up Jeep, something with some character, hitting the open road, crisscrossing Pennsylvania to get a feel for things. And, first stop, we're heading straight to Fulton County. Back in 2020, 85% voted for Trump.
Yeah, it's pretty much the definition of Trump country.
And I mean that literally. One of our sources mentioned a Republican fundraiser dinner thing where the main course was, get this, ham, turkey, and Democrats.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty wild, right? But here's the thing. It's easy to write these voters off, as one-dimensional. But their support for Trump, it comes from a real place, a deep well of concerns. I mean, these are folks who are deeply religious, fiercely patriotic, and they're worried, about things like immigration, what they see as like this radical left agenda encroaching on their way of life.
Absolutely. They feel like their values are under attack and that their way of life is disappearing.
Exactly. And look, the old saying, as goes Fulton County, so goes the nation. Maybe, maybe not, we'll see. But here's the thing. Even if those concerns seem miles away, from like a big city, they resonate far beyond those county lines. And Republicans, they know that. Holding on to those strongholds like Fulton County, it's crucial, especially in this election.
Especially because they're facing an uphill battle in other parts of the state, like those suburbs, where more and more women are leaning Democrat, especially after Roe v. Wade. It shows you how the electoral map is like a patchwork quilt. And to win, you need to thread a very specific needle.
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure. Okay, so we're ditching the Make America Great Again hats, grabbing our backpacks, because next stop is Penn State University. Trading in the diners for, well, dorm rooms, lecture halls. We're diving into the minds of young voters, and let me tell you, they are not holding back. They're calling this political landscape disheveled, chaotic, a real turning point.
I mean, can you blame them? This is the world they're inheriting. Climate change, economic instability, political polarization. It's enough to make anyone question the system, right?
For sure. And that uncertainty, it colors how they see everything, this election. Definitely no exception.
Totally. We're talking about their future.
We heard a lot of disillusioned, apathetic, even scared when they talked about the future. It's a stark contrast to that almost defiant hope that we saw back in Fulton County, really highlights how differently these generations see what's at stake in this election.
Yeah, and it's not like they're not politically active. They're volunteering, organizing, debating. But there's this sense that they're still looking for candidates who actually get them. Someone who offers a vision for the future that's more than just like sound bites and Twitter wars.
Right, they want substance. And speaking of things that matter to this generation, remember that Israel-Hamas conflict that was all over the news a while back?
Sure.
Well, it's still causing a lot of tension on college campuses, especially amongst young Jewish and Palestinian students. And it's really exposing this rift within the Democratic Party itself.
Yeah, it's a generation that's been deeply affected by this conflict, whether directly or just by seeing its impact. And a lot of them, especially those younger Jewish and Palestinian voters, they feel let down by how the current administration has handled it. They're questioning if it aligns with their values.
Totally. And it just goes to show that even within a group like young voters, there are so many different opinions, experiences that shape their choices. What keeps a student in Philly up at night, it might not even cross the mind of someone in Fulton County. You have to understand those local currents that feed into the big political river,
Right, it's all connected. And the Democrats, they've got this unique challenge. How do you bridge that gap between generations within your own party? How do you address these concerns of these young, politically engaged voters without alienating your older base?
It's a tough needle to thread, for sure. Okay, so we're saying goodbye to the energy of the college campus and heading to a place with a different kind of energy. Let's just say it's a bit more, well, strong and silent. Time to grab a beer, maybe something a little stronger, at this working-class bar in Allegheny County. We're here to hear from union members, blue-collar workers, people who have always been, traditionally at least, a cornerstone of the Democratic Party, but their loyalty, well, let's just say it's not a given these days.
Yeah, this is a group that's really grappling with a changing world, a changing economic landscape. Decline of unions, rise of automation, globalization.
hmm
A lot of these folks are feeling left behind. They feel like the party, the Democrats, they're not fighting for them anymore.
It's that feeling of being forgotten, left behind, and we're talking about the kind of place where seeing a Reagan Democrat bumper sticker wouldn't even be surprising. And it's in these spaces, over beers, shared frustrations, where you really understand how the ground is shifting beneath our feet politically.
Absolutely. You see that disconnect, that feeling of being unheard,
Yeah.
which I think is why someone like Trump, who positions himself as the champion of the forgotten man,
Right.
resonates so much with these voters.
Right, right. And it's not just about the economy either. It's about identity, a feeling that their values, their whole way of life, it's being disrespected, ignored even. And Trump, you got to give him credit. He knows how to tap into that.
He speaks their language.
Exactly. He speaks their language. And it's a powerful reminder that sometimes people vote with their hearts more than their wallets. They're looking for someone who sees them, who gets what they're going through, even if the struggles are, more about that feeling of cultural identity than just like economic hardship.
Right. It's about feeling understood.
Yeah.
And it's a good reminder that voters aren't one-dimensional. Their
That's
choices
right.
come from a mix of things. It's complex.
It is complex. It really is.
And it's not just about economics. It's about identity, a feeling that their values, their whole way of life, it's being disrespected, ignored even. And Trump, you got to give him credit. He knows how to tap into that. He speaks their language.
Exactly.
It's about acknowledging that complexity,
Yeah.
Voters, they aren't just one thing. They're choices, driven by a million different factors. It's complicated.
It really is. Okay, so from those wood-paneled walls of that Allegheny County bar, we're hitting the gas again, heading to a very different kind of urban landscape. Philadelphia.
Ah, Philly.
A city famous for its vibrant Black community, and traditionally a pretty safe bet for Democrats.
Historically.
But, and this is interesting, there's this undercurrent, right? This lack of enthusiasm, especially among young Black men, for the Democratic ticket.
Yeah, and that's something the Democrats really need to pay attention to.
Mhm.
This isn't just a handful of people. This is a demographic that can make or break an election. And they feel like the Democrats are taking them for granted.
It's like they're being told, hey, remember the civil rights movement? We were on your side then, stick with us. But that message, it just doesn't resonate with a generation facing such different challenges now, right?
Different world.
Totally. We're talking economic inequality, police brutality, a system that feels, rigged against them from the start, just bringing up the past. It's not enough. They want a plan for the future.
Exactly. They want to see their reality reflected in the candidates they support, not just promises based on past victories.
Right. And it gets even more complicated because one of our sources, a community organizer, really plugged into these conversations. He mentioned overhearing some pretty troubling stuff from some young Black men. Talk about women in positions of power, like women are too emotional or a woman just isn't tough enough to be president.
Yeah, that's tough to hear. It just goes to show how deep that sexism runs in our society.
Yeah.
And it's especially disheartening to hear it coming from a community that already faces so much systemic racism. This isn't just about politics anymore. It's about confronting those deep-seated prejudices, challenging those stereotypes.
Absolutely. And it really highlights why representation matters at every level.
100%.
It's not enough to just talk about equality. People need to see themselves in their leaders to actually believe that their voices are being heard, that their experiences are understood.
It's about feeling seen, feeling like you belong.
Exactly.
When you see someone who looks like you, comes from a similar background, leading with strength and empathy, it changes everything. It opens up possibilities.
It changes the narrative. Okay, so we're leaving the city, the urban energy of Philadelphia, and trading it for something, well, a little more peaceful, maybe. Picture this. Leafy streets, farmers markets, the suburbs of Bucks County.
Ah, Bucks County. Sounds nice.
Right. Think soccer moms, those honk for democracy signs. It's like suburban politics in its purest form.
Suburban charm, but don't let that fool you. It's a battleground, just as important as those rural diners and union halls we talked about.
Oh, absolutely.
Bucks County and those suburbs around Philly, they're key.
Mm.
And the voters there, especially women, they are fired up this election.
It's the power of the suburban woman. And they've been especially energized and honestly pretty anxious since Roe v. Wade was overturned.
Yeah, they're seeing their rights under attack, their values ignored.
These are voters who traditionally have been more moderate, but they're increasingly put off by what they see as extremism in the Republican Party.
They're worried about the future, about the country their kids are going to inherit.
And they're channeling that fear, that frustration into action. We're talking grassroots activism like you've never seen before. We met women who had never been politically active in their lives, and now they're organizing voter registration drives, knocking on doors, even traveling from other states to get involved here in Pennsylvania.
Wow, that's commitment.
It really is.
Hmm.
And there's this urgency in their voices, It's not just about winning an election anymore. It's about protecting the very idea of American democracy, those rights and freedoms they see slipping away.
It's about standing up for what they believe in.
Mm.
And, that's what's so powerful about all this. It's not just politics as usual. It's personal.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
These women, they're not just voting for a candidate. They're fighting for something they believe in, their vision of America.
It's like, what's that saying? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. And you can really feel that here. Whether we're talking about abortion rights, economic security, or just that feeling that your vote actually matters. People feel like the stakes are, I don't know, higher than ever.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, right? Because that urgency, it goes beyond those traditional political divides.
Right.
Think back to those Trump supporters we met in Fulton County. They feel it too, that anxiety about the future.
Oh, for sure. Different worries, maybe, but that same, unease, it's there.
Exactly. They might speak a different language, have different priorities, but that underlying fear about what the future holds, that's something they share with those suburban moms in Bucks County, even if they'd never admit it.
It's like we're all living through the same storm, right? Just in different boats, some weathering the waves a little better than others.
That's a good way to put it.
And that shared anxiety, that uncertainty, that's the undercurrent driving this whole election.
It really is. And, we talk about Pennsylvania being a microcosm of America.
Right, the Keystone State.
And after this trip, after talking to people, seeing it firsthand, it's hard to deny the hopes, the anxieties, that deep sense of division. It's all there, reflected in the eyes of the voters we met.
It reminds you that those big national narratives, the polls, the commentators, that 24/7 news cycle, it doesn't always capture the reality on the ground, Those individual stories, those worries that keep people up at night.
Exactly. And that's what we've tried to do with this deep dive, right? Cut through all the noise and actually listen to people who are living and breathing this election every single day.
Because at the end of the day, it's their votes that will decide the future of Pennsylvania.
And maybe even the future of the country.
Absolutely. So as you follow this election, as you're watching the debates, scrolling through Twitter, whatever it is, just remember, look beyond those headlines. Try to find those different points of view. Don't just accept the narratives you're being fed. Dig a little deeper, ask some questions, and most importantly, listen to the people around you.
It's about understanding each other, right? That's how we move forward.
Exactly. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the heart of Pennsylvania. It's been illuminating, to say the least.
It's been a journey, that's for sure. And remember, every voice, every vote, it matters. Make yours heard.
Couldn't agree more. Until next time, thanks for listening.